specific, or it was?
I think we're being very specific. I do have to say that I feel that most of the problems I find with my students, and obviously that's so varied, one can't generalise, is that they, I suppose, afraid, they're apprehensive as to how to start the first note. They don't know how to get there. And I say, well, the first thing you have to remember is that when you're just sitting there thinking about it without any accompanist, either pianist or orchestra with a conductor, you've really got to totally use your imagination in order to get to your voice, because there's nothing prompting you. The moment of opening your mouth to sing is not being led into by the fact you've got 5 bars of music that you're singing. So what you need to do is to train yourself to imagine that you're going to sing at a certain point. Give yourself a rhythm, if you like. But I use visual. I think if you can't teach someone visually, then there is a big problem, because I just don't know how the voice comes to connection without you doing it totally naturally. And it's like having a vision, having a visual. It's hearing something and feeling you want to do it. This is how we first started singing, perhaps as all children of various ages, anything between 3, 5, 7, 10. One day we opened our mouth and we sang, and everybody said, "Oh, that's fantastic, that's beautiful, well, you must sing more." One thing they never get at that age, none of us ever got at that age, was, "Who's your singing teacher?" Now, what's got us to the point where we just thought, and you sang, because it's that vision, it's that feeling that brings the vocal cords together with the connection of a very fast current of electricity from the brain, because it's got to affect those vocal cords by the little muscles in the larynx to get them in the right position to produce whatever your first note is going to be, together with the feeling. And it all happened equally and instantly before you started thinking about it. So be careful of thinking too much about it.
It's like speaking.
And
we don't think
it's exactly, it's very connected with preparation for speech.
Yeah.
If you feel as though you want to do it, and
that's
you do
what
it.
I always say, that you mustn't make a big deal out of starting a note.
But you have to use imagination to get there. Because if we're speaking, either as an actor or just everyday conversation, we have a reason for saying the next sentence, starting the next sentence. It's because we want to communicate a feeling or an idea. And so we have to do the same thing.
So if you're just thinking about the idea of producing a sound, and you don't want to get too tied in knots, thinking, how do I do it, what happens? I think the best way around it is to say to somebody, imagine you're just going to speak to me, and then just speak on a note.
I agree.
That's my bloody phone. So it's as easy, it's as easy as pushing a button. So that's what I say as well, to start to sing. Just
but it's not complicating
like when I say
matters.
to you, hi, 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 just so that it's not made, just sort of want to make a big deal out of it.
Well, that's what I was saying.
No, I know that.
I
agree with you.
But of course, as soon as one starts explaining why, then it sounds complicated. But for me to say to someone, get into your own mind, look out there, think something is coming back, and you're ready to say something, you're going to go and hold it. Which it can easily be. And hold it first, on a point. There you are.
Yeah.
And it comes from the imagination.
There's another thing that was very important to me as a singer. I fell in love with Enrico Caruso's recording when I was a kid, very small. And this sound affected my imagination. Only after I was 30, I started listening to other tenors and singers, because Caruso for me was a god, you know, and I didn't like anybody else but Caruso. Then I started appreciating more, you know, more diversity in voices, and obviously Corelli, and I read actually Corelli's remark. He's mentioning that no matter how you try to be someone else, and he meant Caruso, you have to respect your own nature. And
I think you're right.
And now this is a dilemma for us, because, for example, I wanted to be Caruso, but I cannot be Caruso, and I should not be Caruso, because I should be myself. But how can I really find myself and my voice it is a process that comes to me as evolving process and natural. Definitely it is this the way, it takes time. Or it's the teacher that helps me to discover it. Or what is this ratio of involvement, if you like, of a teacher. If you're lucky, of course, with a good teacher, if the teacher respects your nature in the first place. Because I also know that no matter how many teachers claim today of universality, it's just virtually impossible to be universally, you know. And the practice proves that a good teacher, one good teacher creates or makes maybe few good singers, and he becomes famous because of that. But I think it's a more complicated process than that. And I want you to discuss this a little bit, because I don't think anybody else discussed this problem. It's a very sensitive problem. It's a sensitive problem. It's even politically incorrect in a way. But I feel it should be discussed, because
I think it ought to be.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, I don't like to think in terms of terming anyone failure. There'll only be a few Carusos, Corellis and Pavarottis in a whole millennium, over the hundreds of years. There are many fine singers who no one's ever heard of. We know that because every time so often we come across an old recording of someone from the past who hardly ever recorded, and you think, that is amazing singing. Why wasn't he famous? Well, there are various reasons for that. So it certainly wasn't a failure. So I think teaching singing, as you say, is very difficult in terms of two personalities coming together, being able to see the problem and the possibilities from the same point of view. Because we're not talking about an exact science where you can put your finger on something and you can tweak it and do things like that, violinist, pianist, whatever. We're talking about a combination of setting up the larynx in perfect position in an instant through our imagination to produce a sound, a resonance, just for a split second. And then supporting that in the correct way so that split second sound is not distorted, and that we continue that lack of distortion and support for the whole of a phrase. Then we stop, start again, and we do it again. Now, how on earth can we do that other than through the imagination and through instinct and conveying something? Of course, we can explain what's happening. I can explain in great detail, so can you, so can we all, what actually happens in the larynx. People take photographs of it, take films of it. But finally, it's just a case of two people with probably varying, if not widely differing, imaginations and backgrounds, trying to explain how this pupil, if you want to call them pupils, how this pupil can improve what they're doing already naturally, or unfortunately what they can improve or correct what they're doing already unnaturally, and that's been imposed for various reasons. They become problems. That's why they tend to come to singing teachers. People write books on this, and I think they can be very useful, but at the end of the day, you've got to be two people in the room working through a problem with a very free imagination. So you can see the problem and you can witness it, but how do you actually get to correct it? And I think, personally, it's by a process of trial and error, trying things out, trying to make not just singing sounds. In fact, I think proper support can be found through doing some of the most peculiar sounds at times. But that's it. It is a science. The actual technique, you can describe it. And there you are, a perfect resonance, and you support it, and there you are, a beautiful note. But that's not just enough. Because the reason why we sing is because of our feelings, our passions, our reactions to the words, our reaction to the music. You have to allow that to come into it as well. So at the same time as you're setting up a technical support, corrective support, you're having to allow the reason for singing, therefore the feelings and the emotions to come in as well. Magically it happens. So you can't control it.
the argument of this getting your voice higher and is that, you know, it's, for dramatic voices, for more mature voices, it's okay to feel it low.
Yes.
But you're a young singer, and you should not be doing any dramatic. That's the connection with the dramatic somehow.
I think what they're worried about is this thing, and I know because I've been down that road myself when I was younger. They're worried about the voice, particularly if it's a big voice, getting too thick and heavy in the middle. If you think too much here.
Yes, sure.
That's the thing. I think but that happens when the voice kind of loses the focus.